My name is Darren Karin. I am the Legislative Manager for Sustainable Energy and Environment Programs here at the Friends Committee on National Legislation. I am based in Washington, D.C., and I'm so excited that we're co-hosting this, what's going to be an amazing call with my colleagues at the Mennonite Central Committee and the Church of the Brethren D.C. offices. And I will introduce Cornelius and Kirsten, as well as Anna, my colleague at FCNL, here in just a moment. But before we do that, would just like to remind people again, please introduce yourselves in the chat, your name and where you're calling in from. We'd love to make this a space where people can connect and maybe meet some new people or connect with some old friends. Just as context before we get started with this event, as the three traditional peace churches here in the United States, the members of the Religious Society of Friends, also known as the Quakers, the Church of the Brethren, and the Mennonite Church feel called to stand for peace worldwide. Increasingly, we're seeing the climate crisis as a growing obstacle to this goal, as increasingly frequent extreme weather events are driving hunger, instability, and poverty around the world. All of these issues then combine to create instability and tensions within communities that then drive conflict and forced migration on truly historic, unprecedented scales. It's clear that we must work to stop climate change, and we specifically in countries that have historically contributed the most to the onset of the climate crisis, countries like the United States, have a particular moral obligation to do more to support communities in countries that are under-resourced to deal with climate change, yet often the most overburdened by its effects. So today, we are going to be hearing and learning from three really amazing panelists, and I'm so excited to have all three of you with us today. First, we will hear from Sibo Nokushle Inchube, the Regional Co-Director for Africa and Europe at the Mennonite Mission Network. We'll then hear from Victor Odinda, Climate Solutions Partner Advisor in MCC's Cambodia office. We'll then hear from Lemmy Thomas Ania, who is the Gender-Based Violence Coordinator at EYN Projects, which is part of the International Church of the Brethren Network. I'll then pop back in briefly to invite you all to take action with us to encourage and urge our governments to invest in international climate assistance, the critical funding that is really at stake, particularly at this point in time in the government funding process. And we'll talk more about that later. And then finally today, we'll finish the event with a Q&A session. So as you hear from panelists, as you're learning from these amazing folks and their experiences, please make good use of the Q&A section at the bottom of your screens. You'll either see a Q&A button on the bottom of the Zoom screen, or you might have to click the three dots, the More button, and then that will pull up the Q&A box. So enter your questions as we are going through, and we will try to get to as many of those as we can at the end of this session. And then finally, before I turn it over to Cornelius, I just want to give a quick shout out to my three amazing partners that have really been critical in putting this together. Kirsten DeMello at MCC, Cornelius Raff at Church of the Brethren, and my colleague Anna Guto at FCNL. Without you three, the co-creation and the co-leadership that you've given, we really couldn't have put this event together. So just a heartfelt thank you to all three of you. It's an honor to work with you all here in DC, and so thankful that we get to see this amazing event come to fruition. So with that, I will turn it over to Cornelius to get us started with introducing our panelists. So Cornelius, the floor is yours, my friend, and thank you again, everybody, for being here. Really look forward to a great session today. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Darren. Really appreciate your lovely introduction here. Really got a great set of speakers lined up today. But before we finally get started, I want to shortly flag that this event is being recorded. So if you want to share or watch the recording after today's event is finished, please feel free to do so. We'll send out recordings to everyone who registered for this event afterwards. So yeah. With that being said, I finally want to introduce and welcome our first speaker, Siben Okule Nkube, who will further frame today's discussion and theme from a theological perspective. Siben Okule Nkube, Siben Okushle Nkube is Mennonite Missions Network's Regional Co-Director for Africa and Europe. She brings expertise from Zimbabwe and a scholarship from Anabaptist Mennonite Biblical Seminary to her role. For 20 years, she has worked on multiple themes and multiple actor programs in Africa and Europe, contributing to co-created solutions through multi-pronged actions for resilience building, including climate-smart agriculture, water sanitation, hygiene, and health promotion. Other works include protection of returnees, refugees, internally displaced people, orphaned and vulnerable children, climate finance governance, organizational development, and disaster risk reduction. She's a licensed minister of the gospel with the Mennonite Church, USA, author and award-winning scholar practitioner. Sibino Kushle is the African liaison for the Mennonite World Conference's Creation Care Task Force and serves on various boards, including the Anabaptist Climate Collaborative, short ACC, and Camp Friedenswald. Her calling as an eco-womanist, practitioner, theologian, and social justice practitioner informs how she connects people and institutions to the beauty and power of God's shalom. Sibino Kushle, it's great to have you today. Please take it away.
Thank you very much, Cornelius, for that kind introduction. I will proceed to share my screen today as I foreground our presentation. In the name of Jesus, who gives us hope and the power to collaborate with the divine in the regenerative work of sustainability as we care for creation, I want to acknowledge that I'm speaking to you from the lands that were once carefully cared for by the Potawatomi, who were driven off the land through trails of death. And so I am greeting you from Goshen, Indiana. Climate change is real, but so is God's shalom. I want to come to this presentation and look through the eyes of a Zimbabwean Afro-eco-womanist who is concerned about all bodies and more so non-human creation. I hope together we can look past the panic to naming the disproportionate loss and damage to our common home, including non-human creation. When we think about climate, we should also think about environmental justice, the haves and the have-nots, as teetering ecosystems and precarious livelihoods of already suffering bodies who are mostly in the Black, Indigenous, and people of color communities go on experiencing adverse life circumstances. Some are haunted by violence and dispossession through imperialism, coloniality, corruption, greed, and capitalistic exploitation. Some are forced to migrate and are experiencing increasing poverty and unemployment. Clearly, there are broken relationships and death-dealing vulnerability being exacerbated. Broken relationships cause me to ask us to envision shalom, which is the God kind of peace that calls us to a right internal relationship, and particularly a right vertical relationship with God and a right relationship with others, being our neighbors and the created orders. I want to ask the question of what needs to change for all of us to usher in the God kind of peace, which is God's shalom. Riffing off Maurice Strong, who commissioned the first global State of the Environment report in the 1970s and then later became the Under Secretary General of the United Nations, who noted, in the final analysis, our economic and social behavior is rooted in our deepest moral and spiritual motivations. We cannot expect to make the fundamental changes needed in our economic life unless they are based on the highest and best of our moral, spiritual, and ethical traditions, a reverence for life, a respect for each other, and a commitment to responsible stewardship of the earth. I'd also like to take us to 2006, where there was a meeting of Harvard scientists and U.S. National Association of Evangelicals. There, Professor Gus Speth of the Harvard School of Forestry and Environmental Studies said the following: I used to think the top global environmental problems were biodiversity loss, ecosystem collapse, and climate change. I thought that with 30 years of good science, we would address these problems, but I was wrong. The top environmental problems are selfishness, greed, and apathy. And to deal with these, we need a spiritual and cultural transformation. And we scientists don't know how to do that. And how correct he was, because this shift that we are looking for requires all of us to participate. I'd like to draw our gaze to 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verses 18 to 19, where I read from the Hebrew scriptures. All this is from God, who reconciled us to himself through Christ and gave us the ministry of reconciliation. That God was reconciling the world to himself in Christ, not counting people's sins against them, and he has committed us to the message of reconciliation. The biblical message in the New Testament invites us to faith in Jesus Christ, to co-embodiment of the new covenant that ushers in God's kingdom reign, where God has reconciled the world to God's self through Jesus Christ to restore shalom. And this shalom, dear siblings, invites us to metanoia, a special kind of repentance and turning away from those behaviors, structures, and systems, sometimes called the big S or the small s, that cause broken relationships and exacerbate the drivers to the changing climate. We are invited to reconciliation. We are invited to the holy and sacred work of repair in our generation. We are invited to the ongoing redemptive work of regeneration. And to do that, we need a change in the attitudes of our hearts and the thought and intentions of our minds, espoused to a holy behavior that seeks to join Creator God in Creator God's concerns. This calls for a prophetic imagination, hopeful participatory action from where you stand, because though climate change can be far removed to some people who are insulated, it is costing people's lives, and it can be overwhelming in its scale. But we are invited to hopeful participatory action, where the gospel invites us to espouse our theologies, our ethics, and our spirituality, to walk alongside, to walk in solidarity with the dispossessed, in alignment with God's shalom across the road and across the globe. I'm invited to the Matthean chapter 25, where Jesus tells a parable about his return and how people and nations will be separated into goats and sheep, depending on the work they did in solidarity with those that Jesus calls the least of these. And when we turn our eyes and gaze to look closely to who the least of these are, it is hard to argue that the least of these take the shape and descriptions of those who in our age match the populations that bear the disproportionate impact of the shifting climate. Beloved, we are all called to a restorative shalom discipleship, a God kind of discipleship that makes us to look keenly at how we can influence social systems, political systems, environmental policies. Look closely at how we can speak the truth to power. Look closely at how we can be collaborative and walk in solidarity with those who are hardest hit in our generation and beyond. With those words, I also give you the gift of these slides so you can relook at some of the choice of words or the diction I have used to think about climate change and God's shalom as a hopeful twosome that we can use to look ahead and figure out what we can do individually and as communities as we look together to a hopeful future. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Sibano Kushle, for your remarks and insights, and really setting the right framework for this discussion and our next panelist. Yeah, appreciate that. Next up, I want to welcome Lemmy Thomas Anaya to the stage, our virtual stage here. Lemmy Thomas Anaya is an experienced humanitarian professional with over 7 years of dedicated service in humanitarian and developmental implementation. Born and raised in Nigeria, Lemmy's passion for community development and protecting vulnerable populations has been a driving force behind his career. He's presently serving as the Gender-Based Violence, short GBV, coordinator for Ecclesiar Yanuvar Nigeria EYN projects, where he provides strategic direction for GBV initiatives and oversees program interventions. EYN Projects is directly affiliated with the EYN Church in Nigeria, the largest national body of the Church of the Brethren in the world, with over 1 million members. Lemmy's expertise encompasses a diverse array of fields, including protection mainstreaming, child protection, climate change programming, sexual and gender-based violence initiatives, and humanitarian assistance. His work has involved collaboration with a diverse range of stakeholders, including local communities, government agencies, and international organizations such as CARE International, Plan International, the International Organization for Migrant Immigration, IOM, and the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. Recently, he has been involved in providing humanitarian assistance to his community in Nigeria, as the country again is experiencing a terrible flooding crisis, a direct cause of climate change with many terrific humanitarian implications. He will shortly give you some more insights on how the climate crisis is specifically contributing to instability and the environmental disruption in his community. Welcome to you as well, Lemmy, and thank you for taking the time to be with us today. The floor is yours.
All right, thank you very much, Cornelius. Yeah, so Nigeria is the most popular African country in Northwest Africa. It's particularly vulnerable to climate change. This is as a result of the rising sea level, the increased vulnerability to flooding, and also access to diseases and waterborne disease. Climate extremes amplify existing inequalities, vulnerabilities, and negative gender and social norms. A report highlights spikes in GBV during disasters and conflicts. Armed conflicts in Northeast Nigeria and Northwest Nigeria has affected humanitarian crisis calling for survival mode. Next slide, please. All right, so according to the recent happening in Northeast Nigeria, we've seen and affected households and communities across Northeast Nigeria. A total of 404,000 people were affected by flooding in 3 states, that is Borno, Adamawa, and Yobe states. 157,000 households were affected. 529 people are injured, and these numbers are still on the increase. and we have recorded over 239 deaths. This is what we are facing at the country at the moment as a result of the rising water level from the communities. Next slide, please. Yeah, so the flood has triggered a humanitarian crisis and affected over 1 million people who are now without essential services like food, shelter, water, sanitation, hygiene facilities, and non-food items. This situation has increased the risk of waterborne diseases and outbreaks, primarily due to inadequate sanitation and limited access to clean water. Next slide. As a result of the conflict in northeast Nigeria, the non-state armed group Boko Haram, founded in 2002, began operation in 2009 to establish an Islamic State. Initially, the primary focus was on resisting Western education. It declared the establishment of a caliphate within the territories under its control in 2014 and abducted many people into their camp by force. Presently, they have shifted operations to the northwest and are into kidnapping and all other forms of crime. Next slide. Looking at the deaths caused by Boko Haram across the states, we have over 38,255 deaths in Borno State. We have 4,127 individuals in Adamawa State, and we have 3,229 individuals in Yobe State. These numbers are beyond this, but these are the ones that we can account for. As a result of the climate change and the conflicts, the extreme exacerbate existing inequalities, existing vulnerabilities, and negative gender and social norms, and all forms of gender-based violence against women and girls, including sexual exploitation and harassment. It's a surge during disasters and conflicts based on findings, based on assessments, FGDs, and gender assessments. It is discovered that it is at this peak that is disaster and conflict that women and girls are mostly affected by violence. Next slide, please. And this in turn bring about displacement of people from the home of origin to IDP camps, expose individuals to hunger, to shelter, and food insecurity as well. Next slide. So according to these disparities in Nigeria's humanitarian crisis, women and girls are affected by humanitarian crisis in northeast Nigeria and northwest Nigeria. 59% of the 8 million people needing services at the base state are females. Out of these, 55% of the 2.2 million IDPs are women. 54% of the returnees are female, while 52% of host committees are also female. 52% of inaccessible populations are women. This brings about, as a result of the violence, the conflicts, men seeking, going into distance to access support and food, other services for families, exposing women and girls to a whole lot of risks. Next slide. The effect and the impact of these emergencies of climate change is endless, and it includes increasing environmental pressures, increasing resources scarcity, and exacerbates gender inequality and power imbalances in households and communities. GBV and harassment are used to prevent women and girls from accessing and exercising their rights over resources and their utilizations. It goes beyond resources and all that. Positions, selections, and other key components at the community level, women are being seen as secondary individuals. Women and girls have up to 14 times the potential to be harmed during disasters. Conflict and displacement increase the risk of GBV within families and within communities. Climate change impacts ecosystem, it impacts the economics, it impacts conflicts, and it impacts social structures. As a result of this flooding that is presently happening where we are now, we'll be receiving a whole lot of negative effects of this flooding, where in the sense that people are being kidnapped and being placed on ransom. Women and girls are exposed to all forms of different survival modes, and also key individuals not responding on time. Next slide. Yeah, so we have been promoting peace through climate change intervention, and the role of EY project in the Northeast is to support, provide renewable energy initiatives focused on delivering dependable, sustainable energy solutions to communities, improving quality of life, and supporting environmental sustainability. As part of our strategic plan, we are proposing the use of support of renewable energy solutions, the biogas, and other forms of energy to reduce the effect of fossil fuels, the effect of coal, and the effect of other energy aspects to as much as 50 or 70%. EY projects work in vulnerable community, providing water, sanitation, and hygiene intervention, food security, livelihood programs, reducing tension over scarce commodities. EYN Peace Building Initiative foster dialogues and cooperation among different groups, helping to mediate conflicts arising from environmental pressures and promote long-term stability in the region. And the cost of intervention, in the cost of providing services at the community level, we also see it as a need for individuals and community to have that sustainability, to have that reflective dialogue session to ensure that whatever intervention is on ground will also promote other things that we find lacking. Next slide. So we also ensure that programming does not contribute to violence by using conflict analysis tool to have a better understanding of the conflict context in which we implement. We analyze, we reflect, and also transform the community beliefs and other norms that we feel are part of what is hindering some negative coping norms in the community. We also use the conflict analysis to identify key decision makers, local leaders, potential spoilers, that is, people who might make the conflict worse for their own interests, and also for beneficiaries. Reflecting on the atmosphere of anger, hatred, mistrust, and fear between and within communities that pervades situations of conflict has helped in the impact and effect of our work through management and dispute resolution mechanisms between agencies and participants, and the relationship between civil and other actors. So with all this, we ensure that in the course of providing intervention, in the course of providing services, we ensure that other needs that we feel that people need to have as a result of climate change, we need to have that reflective sessions. How do I affect the environment? Am I a positive effect? Do I have a positive effect on the environment? Do I have a negative effect on the environment? Because most of the times when you support communities, you discover that instead of the intervention to promote peace and resolution, it is yielding violence. So we look at this critically as an organization, we look at this as a team, we reflect on it before going out there to provide services. And we need to ensure and ask the question, these interventions, are they environmentally friendly? If we feel the interventions are not friendly to the organization or going to cause more harm, we bring out modalities on how we're going to implement on them. Next slide, please. And as part of our intervention, we educate and promote agricultural practices that mitigate climate change and its effects, and also enhance resilience. We have approached two separate approaches, like cash for work, committee-led sanitation, where committee take the lead. We have committees that are the forefront leading on climate change to ensure that these are the impacts, these are the effects if these are not taken into consideration during the course of the community services. Next slide, please. As part of our intervention to promote climate change and a peaceful environment, we also enhance atmospheric resilience to climate change. That is, we engage in communities in tree planting initiatives to mitigate the adverse effects. We commemorate with the Tree Planting Day, the World Environmental Day, using that approach to inform and sensitize the government of the needs to look into the issue of climate change and also to ensure that the environment is well protected. Next slide, please. So during the course of our rehabilitation, that is areas that were affected by conflicts, we rehabilitate community infrastructure while we actively engage in peace building and dialogue sessions with stakeholders. We conduct in-depth critical reflective sessions, in-depth post-analysis, and also action plans have been taken at the end of some of these reflections to ensure that such incidents doesn't reoccur and also promote peace and stability at the community level. Next slide, please. So we also promote other key activities and key components at the community level, where we have women-led intervention, women being part of decision-making, women being part of leadership, women being part of consultation. We also guide them with some male alliance by conducting reflective sessions, by conducting some social analysis and acting on these interventions to ensure that gender-based violence, conflicts, and other negative norms at the community level are addressed to the best point. Next, please. As part of our activities as well, we collaborate with school authorities to raise student awareness about GVV and the effect of climate change on our environment and implications for the future. During World International Day of the Women, International Day of the Girl Child, Children's Day, other notable activities. We'll use such opportunities to ensure that both students and out-of-school children know the negative effects of gender-based violence and the effects of climate change as well, and the implications on the long-term run. Next, please. So climate change exacerbates existing social and economic and gender inequalities in Nigeria, deepening the humanitarian crisis. Effective intervention requires a holistic approach that combines environmental sustainability with peace building and conflict-sensitive programming. By prioritizing renewable energy, enhancing community resilience, and addressing other gender disparities, programs and projects like EYN can help mitigate the impact of climate change while fostering long-term stability and gender equity in the region. So we call on everyone listening to take collective actions, call on everyone listening to send out a strong appeal to governments, to corporations, and other entities, business, to change their policies and become environmental friendly. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much again for your presentation. Just really showing us the complexity of this issue. I just want to thank you so much for your for the invaluable and significant work you do every single day. So yeah, appreciate your remarks. Before I turn it over to a third speaker, I just want to remind you all, as Kirsten is also doing in the chat, to put any questions you want to pose to any of our speakers today by using the Q&A feature, which should be located close to the chat feature. So yeah, as Darren mentioned in the beginning, we will have about like 30 minutes for Q&A after other speakers have completed their talks. And we'll try to answer as many of your questions as we can. So yeah, with that being said, I want to invite Victor Odinda as our next speaker to address how the climate crisis is impacting his community in Cambodia. Victor Odinda has worked as a climate solutions partner advisor for Mennonite Central Committee MCC Cambodia since April 2023. Previously, he has worked as a program management professional for various NGOs and consult agencies in Kenya and Cambodia. In his role, Victor advises local community development partners on design, planning, implementation, monitoring, and evaluation of projects related to sustainable climate solutions. Victor has a degree in economics, offering an extra perspective on the socioeconomic dynamics that result from climate change at the community level. Victor lives in Phnom Penh, but works with partners spread across other provinces in Cambodia. Please, Victor, take it away.
All right. So it's a pleasure to speak to all of you. So I'm just going to share my screen so that we might go through this journey together. And I hope that you can all see my screen. All right. So yes, so this is where we're going to start. Yeah, so the gentleman on your screen looks like me. His name is Victor Michael Odinda, and he serves as the Climate Solutions Partner Advisor for MCC Cambodia. Originally, I am Kenyan, so I've seen in the chat there's 1 or 2 people from Kenya, so yeah, I'm here representing. Yes, so then you might ask yourself, what does a Climate Solutions Partner Advisor actually do? So I'm gonna just briefly tell you what I do. And my job involves 3 things. So there's climate science, there is project management, and there is economics. So I advise local development partners on, programming, everything to do with programming related to environmental protection, food security, and livelihoods. So basically what we are doing is we are saving the earth, but at the same time, we are looking at, we must eat. So then how do we save the earth in a way that we must eat? And as well, we must make some money while at it. So we must have some livelihoods, we must have food, but at the same time, we need to save the earth from the ravaging effects of climate change. All right, so today I'm going to talk about an integrated approach to climate solutions, because most of us, when we look at climate solutions, we always think about, the earth is going to be destroyed. But then what we forget is that it affects the social, the political, and the economic aspects of our livelihood as well. And conflicts abound because our resources are being affected. So when there's fewer resources and there's more people trying to get these resources, then there's going to be conflict. So what do we do about it? We need to have some peace building, all right? And I'm going to take it from this perspective. One of our partners, their name is Peace Bridges Organization. They do an amazing job on environmental conservation meeting conflict transformation. And that is what I'm going to talk about today, because we want to have peace. There is conflict. So what do we do about it? All right, in a way that we still are going to save the earth. So I'm just going to give you a bit of a background information. In Cambodia, there are 2 very important natural resources. The first resource is the Prey Lang forest. Now, this is a forest that covers a good percentage of Cambodia, 4 provinces in Cambodia. And what has been happening in Prey Lang forest is that it has been encroached by illegal loggers. And what has been happening is that there are communities, indigenous communities and Cambodian communities, who have called this place home for hundreds, even thousands of years. And what is happening is that illegal loggers have encroached and they are cutting down the trees and destroying the natural environment, which is a habitat to these people. And because of the politics and the way things are structured, it's very hard for them to actually crack down on these illegal loggers. And this has given a lot of conflict between the illegal loggers and the people themselves who live within Prey Lang forest. Then the second aspect of the background information is on the Mekong River. Now, the Mekong River is one of the biggest rivers in Asia, and it has been home, the Cambodian aspect of it has been home to a number of communities who fish within the Mekong River for them to have their daily food or nutritious needs. So what has been happening is that there has been overfishing, and this overfishing comes from a bit of community and commercial interests. Now, we have people who come in with commercial interests, and commercial interests means we are maximizing profit. So we're going to get rid of all the fish in the Mekong River just so that we can make profit out of it. Because over the 3 years, the fish cover, according to the research that is available, is that the fish cover within the Mekong, especially in the Cambodian stretch, has dropped by over 60%. Why is this? Because of overfishing. And number two, the ways in which people fish, things like using electric shock, things like using drag nets. These are very dangerous ways of fishing, and that is why the fish population is declining. So basically, there is conflict. And the people there are concerned about what they're going to do about this. So MCC comes in, and through our implementing partner PBO, they have devised a 5-point approach, which is an integrated response method to this crisis. And it involves 5 key aspects. First is the forest protection. We need to protect the forest, the prairie land forest. Number 2, we have the river protection. So we want to make sure that the people who fish at the Mekong River fish in a way that is environmentally friendly and will protect the biodiversity of the Mekong River. Now, because forest protection and river protection, there's conflict. So what do we do about it? We bring peace. And that is why at the center of it all is conflict transformation. And then we realize that the cultural dispensation of Cambodia has marginalized the women or has belittled the contribution of women to this approach of peace building. So what do we do about it? We decide to empower, do a gender engagement. Now, and gender engagement is different from the normal gender empowerment that we know. So what we're doing is we are taking the girl child, we are empowering them, we are giving them the skills, we're giving them the voice, we're giving them a seat at the table. But we are also looking at the male child who is also involved in this. And we are trying to talk to this male child to create space in their minds and in their cultural dispensation for the girl child to also occupy a place on the table. So basically, we are doing both gender empowerment and gender engagement so that we can fight this war together, right? And the last aspect of the response is the religious or cultural preservation. So the prairie land forest and the Mekong River have also had cultural significance to the Cambodian populations and especially the indigenous populations that live there. So most of these people have what we call ritualistic beliefs or cultural beliefs that certain trees within the forest have certain levels of significance where they bring good luck, they bring good karma, and that is the reason why we need also to look at the cultural dispensation and preserve this culture of these people. So let's look at it one by one. So as you can see on the screen, we have forest protection where PBO has empowered the community people to do forest patrols in Kampong Tom, Krache, Sang Traing, and Prairie Vihia provinces in Cambodia. So what has happened is that these people have been empowered with the skills to actually patrol the forest and engage these loggers, call out the illegal loggers, get a way in which they can actually tell them, hey, what you're doing is not right. So the community is getting empowered. They're doing forest patrols. As you can see on the screen, these are community members. As you can see, both male and female are there. This was not so because it was believed to be a male part of the society, the security aspect of things. But then with the gender empowerment, the women have also joined in the patrols. So the next thing is the river protection, which happens to be my own personal favorite. Now, the river patrols do two things. First, they have they protect the river as a natural resource from overfishing and from illegal ways of fishing, which we've given examples like drag nets, we've given examples like electronic use of electricity to shock the fish. And what the community does is that they patrol this place in order to protect it. But then what happened is they realized that the fish cover is going down. So what do? Let us repopulate this river with the fish. So the project has empowered certain members of the community to grow fingerlings. These are small fish within fish farms within the community. And what you see in the inset photograph is an event called the fish release. And the fish release is where we bring NGO members, we bring the Buddhist community, so the interfaith movement, we bring in the community members. And what we do is called the fish release, where we release the small fish to marked areas of the river, which will be protected by the community people to allow for the fish to grow to a certain age whereby they can now be released to the wild. And that area of the fish, the community are allowed to fish there as they go to repopulate another area of the river. So what we are saying is we are protecting the river, but then we are also increasing the fish cover of the river in a way that will benefit the community and bring cohesion into the picture. All right. So these people, of course, you know, we are protecting these resources, and the illegal loggers have interests there, be it commercial interests, be it, you know, their own interests, and it caused a lot of friction. And one of the things that happened, we have a story whereby one of the community people lost a leg because of a direct confrontation that happened. These loggers came at night to attack these people who are protecting the forest, and they were able to injure one person, a lady who lost a leg because of that. And that is the reason why conflict transformation is very important here. So what is happening is the participants are taught non-violent ways to engage with the loggers and to engage with other parties involved to find amicable solutions to these problems. So be it legal, so whereby we have the local authorities getting involved, we have the law getting involved, whereby we can now do mediation, and we can, instead of direct confrontation, we can have mediations whereby people will find amicable ways of solving these conflicts. So what has happened is that the direct confrontation and violence has gone down and has been replaced by mediation. And that is the reason why the peace aspect is coming in. Now, looking at the gender engagement, I've talked about mediation. And so culturally in Cambodia, the voice of the woman is not given enough strength as the voice of the man, especially in some of these cultural dispensations where the man makes most of the decisions. So forest protection, river protection was considered a man's job. But then what happened is the PBO, our partner, engaged women to increase their capacity, skills, and confidence to also engage in community peace building and environmental protection activities. So PBO works also to change men's attitudes. Now, this is the interesting part. You actually find that there are empowered women, but then we also go and work with the man so that at some point you have the man creating space for there to be a space for the woman to come in and also join in these efforts. So you will find women join the men in forest patrols. You will also find that more women, young and old, are engaging in environmental protection activities. So this has really helped. This has also helped reduce the amount of violence. Some of them are actually leading the mediation efforts, as we will see very soon. So that is about gender engagement. Now, looking at the religious and cultural preservation, these forests have a very, very great significance religiously and culturally to these people. So what is happening is that once a year, there are interreligious exercises that are held between Buddhists, Muslims, and Christians, together with community cultural leadership, where they jointly bless the forest in whatever way they do. So the Christians will pray, the Buddhists will do their thing, the Muslims will do their thing, you know, because this is a community effort. And again, this kind of events bring people together. They bring people in so that they can actually negotiate. Actually, the local authorities come, and also some of the loggers actually come in, which is something that is really something that we're proud of. All right. So they come in, they bless the forest together with the cultural leadership and pray for good karma or good blessings upon the forest and the people who live there. So then you might be asking yourselves, so how do we put this into practice? I'm going to tell you a story about Miss Chimsoka. Miss Chimsoka is, her role is that she has played a pivotal role in organizing some of the events that I talked about, like Plantation Day, the Interfaith Harmony, and the Release Week. So her effective communication and coordination have led to significant student and community involvement. So here we have different stakeholders. We have children, we have grown-ups, we have schools, we have local authority, we have the NGOs, we have the local community, we have the indigenous population who live in this forest. And she has played a pivotal role to bring them together. McHugh, she is, as a result of the gender empowerment program that is part of the integrated approach to this problem that we're having. So these are fruits of the labor of the project. So how does she do it? She does it through developing relationships between school administrations, between the local authorities, between other stakeholders, and bringing them together for these activities. So some of the benefits, student and community. So the tree planting initiatives have provided long-term environmental and educational benefits. They have also fostered a sense of community involvement as well. And if you look at it from the Interfaith Harmony Week, where, you know, today is, we have a collection of churches that we've come together. So I'm gonna really base my talk here on the Interfaith Harmony Week. So this event promoted respect and unity among different faiths and encouraged community development. Ms. Soka's leadership in organizing this event underscores her commitment to inclusivity. So Cambodia is 90%, almost 90% Buddhist. And there are Muslims as well who are the charm. There are Christians as well, the likes of us. There are people who worship culturally. So just her work in bringing all these faiths together is something that has been of great use towards this cause. So then you're going to ask yourself, why are we here? You know, when I came to the US to talk about climate change in the Global Voices Initiative, where I actually met the organizers of this event, many people in the Global North were asking, so how do we get involved? So the first way you can get involved is to talk about it. You know, climate change has been left as a topic to be talked about by politicians, to be talked about by business people, to be talked about by, you know, professors and in research labs trying to save the planet. But then we want to bring this conversation to your houses. We want to bring this conversation to your pulpits in the churches. Talk to people about climate change. Let it be an everyday topic, not just a topic that is out there in the news, but an everyday topic of your lives. The second way you can involve yourself is through advocacy action, what we are doing today. So, you know, the biggest emitters are from the Global North. And what we'll do as people in the Global North is to talk to your governments. Talk to your governments, talk to them to support climate change initiatives within the scope of the whole world in order for us who are low emitters but are feeling the effects of climate change to be able to benefit. Because you have resources that you can use to combat this challenge. So advocate for it. Now, the third thing is you yourself be the change. Now, there is a very nice friend of mine, Mr. Gecko there, who says recycling takes a little effort on your part, but makes a big difference to the world. So whatever you do, be it using a reusable straw or riding a bicycle to school, it is nice, it is good. So do it. Never think that you're alone, because if Victor in Cambodia does something about it, And then there is somebody in the US that does something about it. And then there is somebody in Kenya who does something about it, and somebody in Malaysia, and somebody in the, UAE, and somebody in Qatar does it. Then we have 7 billion people responding to climate change. All right. Then another thing would be financial support. Most of our organizations like MCC has heavily benefited from donations from the Mennonites, the Mennonite churches. You have supported us, whether in kind or in cash. Please continue to do so. And as you can see, there is a small QR. If you just go to that QR, you'll get a lot of information on climate action for peace and what MCC partners around the world are doing to combat climate change, and actually using climate action to drive peace within a very chaotic world that we live in. So just go there, click on the QR code, it will take you to the website, and you'll be able to see it. So now I want to end, but before I end, there is a gentleman who is in the middle of your screen that I want to shout out. I normally butcher his name, but today he showed me how to pronounce his name, so I'm going to pronounce it very well. His name is Mainza Hanzukule. Now, this gentleman is from Zambia, and he joined us in Cambodia almost at the same time as me, and he's the Peaceful Education Coordinator of MCC Cambodia. Now, he has been instrumental in bringing in the peace aspect of things. So I don't work alone. I am in the climate solutions, but he brings in the peace aspect. So we work together. And I would say a lot of credits to him. I would like to shout him out, and also the work we do and the whole of MCC Cambodia. And I will end that. If you'd like to have more information about it, please feel free to drop us an email, and we'll get back to you. So thank you so much. Me and my Mickey Mouse friend, we thank you for listening, and back to you. Thank you so much. All right.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Victor, for this presentation and the little call to action at the end. Just a reminder for folks, we'll be sending out, along with the recordings after the meeting, materials and presentation from the panelists. So no worries if you don't catch the links or any materials on the chat right now. Yeah, just wanna thank you again, for your tremendous work you're doing every day. Really appreciate that, and in leading your community in the fight against this multi-layered crisis of the climate crises, with this like holistic approach. So yeah, thank you so much. We are already over an hour in, so I guess we're heading to our last speaker as we're closing down. I want to invite Darren Caron again as our last panelist, who earlier today so kindly introduced us to this event. Just want to shortly introduce him again. Darren Caron is the Legislative Manager for Sustainable Energy and Environment at the Friends Service Committee on National Legislation, short FCNL. Darren lobbies Congress to support action to respond to the climate crisis and prevent the further degradation of our communities and our planet. Originally from Missouri, he graduated from Missouri State University with a BS in Political Science and Communications in May 2020. His studies focus on U.S. foreign policy and politics in Latin America. Prior to joining FCNL, Darren was the International Policy Analyst for Bread for the World, where he built and ran the climate change legislative program for the organization. He also chaired the Interfaith Working Group on Foreign Assistance, a collective of 50 faith-based organizations focused on advocating for robust U.S. funding of poverty-focused development assistance. Darren will now more narrowly speak on how everyone joining us from the US today can contact the members of Congress and urge them to support international assistance for communities and countries that are disproportionately affected by the climate crises. He'll touch on how to amplify the voices of international community leaders such as Lemmy and Victor, whose communities are, as we have heard today in the presentations, dealing with the impacts of our reckless contribution to global pollution every single day. Darren, I want to thank you again for this collaboration and making this event possible. So yeah, take it away.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Cornelius, for that introduction. And thanks again to our amazing panelists who have shared their expertise and their insights on this complex nexus. I'm sure we've all learned something new today. For me, I think one of the best takeaways that I've learned from this is just understanding deeper how climate change is already exacerbating pre-existing inequalities and the complex nature in which all of these issues interlink with each other. And I can't wait to hear more during the Q&A. So just as a reminder to folks to please make good use of that Q&A box. We have some great questions already, and looking forward to a great discussion shortly. So one thing, in addition to what I've previously said, I hope we take away from this event is that faith communities around the world, and in particular, faith communities in the Global South, are certainly doing their part to respond to the climate crisis. But now really is the time for the world's richest countries, such as the United States, to do its part to support these communities. Now, we at FCNL, the Church of the Brethren, and MCC, we work on many different climate policy issues here at the federal level together. And we've made enormous strides in reducing emissions here in the United States in recent years with the passage of bills like the Inflation Reduction Act. We know it's not enough. We know we need to do more here domestically. But certainly one of the biggest glaring gaps that we have in U.S. Climate action, and one of extreme urgency this year in particular, is international climate assistance. And that sounds like a complex term, but really all international climate assistance is the money, the funding that rich governments provide to countries and communities in the Global South to mitigate the impacts of the climate crisis in their own communities and to adapt to the climate changes that are already underway, as we've learned about today. In the next government funding bill, which is due by the end of this year, we are urging the U.S. Congress to protect and expand these critical investments in international climate assistance. We can't afford to wait. The climate crisis is already here. It's already affecting our neighbors, our brothers and sisters around the world. It's already affecting God's creation, this earth. We must act now. Both action alerts will allow you to send emails to your representatives and your senators, or to your MP if you're a Canadian friend joining us, that will allow you to voice your support for this critical funding in government funding bills this year. I will put the action alerts in the chat here, so feel free to visit those 3 particular websites, fill out those action alerts if you feel so inclined. We will also be sharing these in the email that we send to folks that have RSVP'd to this event after the fact. And also encourage you, if you're watching this recording after the fact, hopefully we will have these in the video description below so that you can easily access all 3 of these links as well. So thank you again for joining us. Thank you for helping spread the word for the importance of these investments. And I am looking forward to a great, robust Q&A session. So I will turn it over to my colleague Kirsten at MCC to moderate us through the Q&A. So Kirsten, the floor is yours, my friend, and thank you all again so much for this amazing session.
Yes, thank you so much to Sibo no Kushle, to Lemmy, to Victor for just enlightening us on that connection between climate and conflict and peace, and especially hearing about those the exacerbation of the inequalities and gender inequalities. So really appreciate all that you've brought to this. We have a question just to start us off for Sibo no Kushle. What are some of the specific examples of the discipleship practices that we can live in, that can live into the metanoia that you talked about, necessary for the climate crisis? And I remember you saying that the metanoia is that special kind of repentance and turning away from all of those different systems and structures that are the cause of these broken relationships with the earth. So what are some of those examples, specifics of practices to live into that?
Thank you very much to Douglas Day Kaufman for asking the question, and to you, Kirsten, for articulating it so well. I suppose our metanoia also depends on where we are standing at individual level. I think the book of Isaiah offers a very special response, which is almost as specific as some of the work mentioned in Matthew 25, verses 31 to 46. And I just want to read the following. It says, Is this not the kind of fasting I've chosen to loose the chains of injustice and untie the cords of the yoke, to set the oppressed free and break every yoke? Is it not to share your food with the hungry and to provide the poor wanderer with shelter? This is also talking about immigrants there, if you may. When you see the naked, to clothe them and to turn away from your and not to turn away from your own flesh and blood. And the scriptures promise that then your light will break forth like the dawn and your healing will quickly appear. Then your righteousness will go before you and the glory of the Lord will be your rear guard. I think the call there is for introspection, looking at the business as usual, individual and community actions that end up being strong drivers to the shifting climate. Could this mean procuring locally grown food or growing your own food in your own little garden every summer? What would this mean? Would this mean that you're sensitive about transportation, the way you use transportation and what transportation you use? Could this mean that you look closely at where you give your gifts, what causes you give your gifts to, and to what ends? Looking at, say, the project drawdown, and you can check this out online, they give us a list of impactful actions at individual and community level. And one of those, I think, have already been listed or been articulated in the two presentations by Lemmy and Victor, which is the education of women and girls, or contributing to alleviation of gender-based violence. So there are many individual and community actions that we can get involved in, including the work of amplifying our voices, the work of advocacy. That could be a work of metanoia, because often coming from our historic Peace Church faith traditions, where we have in a way been oriented to being the quiet of the land, we are this time being asked to amplify our voices together or on behalf of the voiceless or those who are underserved. So there are a myriad of actions that we can plug ourselves to. And I think the important point for disciples is to figure out from where you stand what would be either low-hanging fruit, the easy to do, the feasible to do, and the possible to do as an individual and corporately with other people, so that we get acting. We act.
Thank you so much, Sibono Kushle. Yes, that all of those points that you made are just really striking a chord in me. So thank you for that. And I would like to, open up that question also to Lemmy and Victor. What are those very specific ways that we can engage? And I would also say, like, globally, we're in this together, and how can we work strategically in a coordinated way on these issues? So I would open that up to the two of you, Victor and Lemmy. And I also want to highlight another question, so you can maybe be thinking about this and addressing this as well. There are a couple questions in the chat about the logging, illegal logging, the loggers, the people that are doing fishing illegally, and what are the ways that you all are you working with them at all to do any kind of re-education or education on other kinds of livelihoods? But also, there's another connected question in the Q&A about that they're members of the community as well. They're people that are just trying to survive and live. So what are those ways that MCC is working with them, humanizing them, and also maybe working with the government on that? And I would say also to Lemmy, that the aspects of livelihoods and bringing people into this journey of protection and addressing the climate crisis means working with those that we feel like are working against what we're doing. So how are we bringing everybody into that picture? So I will ask Victor and Lemmy to also share their thoughts.
Right. Thank you very much, Kirsten, for moderating the session. And thank you very much to the chat for the questions. So first and foremost, I would say that from a programming aspect of things, just integrating the various stakeholders within the ecosystem into these approaches. You know, most of the times we look at climate change as a standout action in itself, whereby we are trying to conserve the environment, we're trying to save the planet. And we are looking at human actions that do that. But we tend to forget that at the end of the day, these people are also just trying to survive, as you say. So basically, having integrated approaches that bring in the politics of things. So we look at the management aspects. So who has power within this system? How can we reach out to them? How can we influence policy? So that is looking at the political aspect of things. And then looking at the social aspect of things as well, whereby we look at our social interactions. Are they harmful to our environment? Are our actions or our social actions causing the increase in greenhouse gases, for example? What Sibonokunle talked about, if it's living responsibly, if it's looking at your transportation. So these are social aspects of things. Also looking at conflicts. How do these resources get shared in an equitable manner? Because you see, most conflicts in the world come from limited resources and many people who are actually gunning for these resources. So looking at resource allocation, looking at how best to share these resources is also something that comes into play. And then if I look at the specific example of what PBO and by extension MCC programming is doing for the community, we look at this place as a place whereby you find people are there and they want to survive, but they're being faced with illegal logging. They are being faced with the fishing. So what we do is, first of all, let us protect the resource so that the resource protect and replenish the resource. So that is the reason why we are not just protecting the forest, but if you saw in the presentation, there were tree planting exercises. So we are replenishing what has been lost at the fish release event. So we are replenishing the fish cover in the river, and we are also protecting the resource. And then looking at that is looking at the conflicts that have come in. So we are looking at, you know, the illegal loggers. How do we bring them in? How do we work with the local authorities, for example? Working hand in hand with the local authorities, involving them in the activities has also helped a lot. And then also we are looking at, you know, who are the facets of this community? We are looking at the girl child as a person who has over history being undermined in this conversation. So how do we bring them in? So just having this holistic integrated approach to programming where you have experts coming in from all fields, and we are saying that climate change is just not a save the earth issue, but it is a political issue. It is a social issue. It is, you know, it is an issue that affects our daily lives. So how do we do and how do we respond to it? So that is, again, with MCC outside the peace project, we also have food security. That is a major concern. So our development partners work with food security. We also have livelihoods, whereby we're looking at alternative sources of income. So we have vocational training programs, whereby we're telling these people, do not go and destroy the environment. Here is a skill that you can use. For example, vocational skills. Like our vocational training programs train things like, you know, aircon fixing, motor fixing, tailoring, and all these other things. So we are providing a skill to these people that is at their level and telling them, hey, you can actually leave the environment alone, but still make some money and still have some food using the same environment. Yeah, thank you. Back to you.
Thank you, Victor. I want to invite Lemmy in if you would also like to share your thoughts on this.
Yeah. So I think in line with what Victor said, what we're doing is not different from what is actually going on there as well. So like for the agricultural level, we have been able to put all these practices because climate change is, like I said, you can't deprive people from making profits while you are trying to protect the environment. Definitely, there are going to be needs. So if you look at it holistically, we are trying to implement a project on that perspective, whereby we have a multifaceted approach towards implementation. For the intervention on GBV and risk, we are strengthening protection services where women can and girls can access the basic services that they need at the community level. And also, we are also engaging, like presently, the project we are working on now, we are conducting a training for master trainers to train adolescent girls and women on cap making, tailoring, hand fan, local spaghetti, and other exports. At the end of the day, we are going to come up with exhibitions and involve some key stakeholders on these are the processes and how to link them and mentor them into the key markets, not forgetting the climate at the same time. So we are trying to engage them into alternative business within, like, because if you discover based on findings, you'll notice that according to the economic situations, the major source of sourcing for income at the community level is through firewood fetching and also converting to coal. And this is as well affect the ecosystem. So if they are empowered and given that alternate intervention, it goes a long way to cover for most of the basic needs and not affecting the ecosystem. Also, we are also giving them other aspects of trainings and vocational information that they need, like access to education. Those who want to further their education, we link them to the education sector. We do conduct reflective dialogue sessions where they reflect on norms and social status. And we don't just do these activities with the women and girls. We conduct these activities with key stakeholders, the men, the boys, the traditional leaders, religious leaders, people of influence at the community level, politicians, and other people that when they speak, like social champions, that when they speak out, people listen and respond to those needs that are in place. So it's a multifaceted thing. It's a multifaceted approach, and hope and we believe that the intervention we are doing is making progress because we have been receiving success stories where we had an interactive sessions with young mothers who were first-time mothers and were introduced into marriage. After that sessions, we are having feedbacks where some of them are assessing education, going back to school, and also looking after the family. Young girls and women have developed skills for recycled, like reusable sanitary pads, which they are using to empower themselves. Because initially, these things are bought with money and it exposes them to a lot of risk. Most of these items that are used are biodegradable, they're eco-friendly, and it is acceptable in the community. So for this, I think we have strengthened to a reasonable extent. Then for agriculture, as part of our strategic plan, we are going to be launching, hopefully, before the end of this year, we are going to be training farmers on modern farming system and also distribution of inputs and groups, making these farmers to form group societies and cooperative society so they can sustain the approach and the key learning systems, and they can transcend these eco-friendly, climate-friendly trainings and interventions they have received to other partners at the neighboring communities as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lemmy. Yes, I think what I'm really hearing through all of these presentations is this, that the ways that we address climate change means we have to constantly be looking at the intersections with food security, with livelihoods. We need to be bringing our faith into it. Also, I don't think we have time for more questions now, but there are wonderful questions in the chat that really stimulate our thinking about interfaith dialogue and the role of different faith groups in our collaborative work to address climate change. And we're hearing about that through Victor's presentation as well. And I imagine that in Nigeria, there's a lot of interfaith work that's also happening. Another question that's coming out of the chat is about militarism. And I know that's something that's at the core of our values and beliefs and our spirituality and theology as members of peace churches. And so how do we know, and research shows that that militarism and violent conflict leads to greater emissions, greenhouse gas emissions. And so how do we deal with that, especially here in the US, where we are spending so much money on manufacturing weapons? So that's something that I think we can all really be reflecting on moving forward. I want to hand this back to Darren to close us out, and also just give another plug to take some action with those action alerts that we posted in the chat. That's one of those ways that we can put our voice out there and where our money is going. Thank you all so much for those responses. Darren.
Great. Thanks, Kirsten. And thank you again, everybody, for being here. We are at time, but as Kirsten said, there are just so many amazing questions that we just don't have time to get to. To me, I feel like this perhaps points to the need to continue these conversations in the future and figure out ways that we can deepen our relationships with each other in this incredibly important work. So thank you again to Kirsten. Thank you, Cornelius. Thank you, Anna. As a reminder to you all, I posted in the chat our action alerts. These are the first way that we invite you to deepen your engagement with our organizations on this important work. And just to reiterate again that the government funding bills here in the United States that funds complementary US government work, that government funding bill is due right at the end of this year. And with the election going on, with all the other sort of newsworthy events that are happening here in DC, we worry that climate and international climate finance could be lost in the shuffle of all the craziness that is happening. So we implore you, if you feel so inclined, please take these action alerts, send these emails, share this work with your friends, your members of your congregations, and get involved in this work with us. And thank you again so much for being here and spending your time with us. So with that, I believe we will let you go here. Thanks again to Sibo Nokushle, to Victor, to Lemmy, Kirsten, Cornelius, and Anna. We greatly appreciate you all. Have a good rest of your day, and hopefully we will talk and work together soon. So take care, everybody.
You're
Thank you
welcome.
all.
Shalom.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
And thank you for hosting.